Hey, this is Ian here, and you're watching the Soulful Man Show. For those who are joining for the first time, we're exploring this topic of tuning into our desire and tapping into our power. I wanted to start today with an observation. I've been, a few things have been going on in my life these days that have been challenging and taxing on me both emotionally and physically. So yesterday, in the busyness of it all, I'm in my car and I'm feeling the tension of the day, and I just begin to slowly do what I like to do when I'm driving even. I just began moving my body and breathing a little bit, just to kind of give myself a little bit of care and feel the tension that had just been building in my back and in my neck, what was being stored there. And just the simple act of doing this just was transformative. And it never ceases to amaze me how I can alter my state and my perspective just within a matter of seconds by giving some awareness to what is in my body, giving myself what I need. And I was like in this juicier place all of a sudden, and my perspective on everything that I was doing just widened out of the narrow scope that I was in from the discomfort of the things that I was doing throughout the day. And it made me think about how this is like the seed of being in a place of desire, how we hold ourselves and how we hold our experiences in the body. So I wanted to share that with you, and I know that we can talk a lot about that today with the speaker that we have. Philip Shepherd is here, and he's the author and founder of Radical Wholeness. And this is an embodied approach to living, or living by being more inside of our bodies. So I want to welcome you, Philip. Thanks for joining.
It's lovely to be here, Ian. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Philip, you're up in Lake Simcoe, got that beautiful wood cabin in the background. Looks like you're you're in the middle of just a relaxing time up there.
Taking advantage of a day and a half.
Yeah, a day and a half, that's all you got.
For the moment, yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, I just got back from 2 weeks in Manhattan. I was recording my first book, New Self, New World, as an audiobook, which is so intense. You know, you're sitting in a booth, staring at an iPad, staring at these words, just reading them. It's 22 hours long. And I loved it, but this is about as far away as I could get from downtown Manhattan.
Yeah, that is about as far away as you can get. Okay, well, enjoy the time that you have there, the remaining time that you have there. So that's, yeah, you got this audiobook. Which book is that you?
The first one, New Self, New World.
Okay.
Interestingly, the second book, Radical Wholeness, I recorded first as an audiobook. And it went so well that we decided to do the first book too, which is twice as long, but twice the fun, I say.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. Well, that's great. And where have you been in your work these days? What's kind of exciting in your work beyond that?
It's all pretty exciting. I'm starting up 2 new facilitators trainings, one in Toronto, one in Salzburg, Austria. The one in Toronto in October, the one in Salzburg in May. And between now and then, workshops in America and England and Ireland and Australia and New Zealand and Canada, as it happens.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
You're in your thing and you're traveling and you're creating. And yeah, you're in that creative place.
Yeah, and it feels like riding a wave. It really does.
Yeah, that's really important. I want people to feel that today. I want people to feel what it feels like to be riding that wave. That is the wave that comes from being in your thing. and riding that wave of desire. I mean, I don't, like, you know, I was given your book by a friend of mine in Toronto, and I'm an embodiment, you know, I'm an embodied person into all things having to do with being body experience. And so she gave this book to me, which I still haven't fully read, nor have I been in your workshops yet, which I would love to participate in. I've done things, many things radical. I've done radical aliveness. I started off in radical honesty. Could you tell us a little bit about kind of what brought you onto this path or your journey into this world?
The challenge is keeping it a little bit, but yeah, I mean, the seed of this journey was germinated when I was a teenager, and I had this kind of inherent deep mistrust of the adult world.
Mm.
It's like they've made a fantasy land. It's a fantasy land that is killing them by degrees. And they're saying to me, oh, come join us, you'll do well. And there was something in me that could feel my being compromised and depleted by the environment in which I had been raised. So there are cultural prohibitions that we take into our bodies from infancy, and they take up root there and they frustrate us and shut us down. And I could feel that happening, and there was a rage, and I knew that if I remained within that milieu, I would succumb. I mean, it was so clear to me. So I left it. I went to England and bought a bicycle and got on it and headed off for Japan.
What age?
And I was 18.
18.
Yeah. And I cycled through Europe and the Middle East and India and Japan. And I mean, in all honesty, I left on that journey quite, in a way, comfortable with the fact that I might not survive it. But I knew that if I stayed, my survival was absolutely not possible. And I found a guidance on that bike trip. Like, I'm going by lines on a map and don't know what's around the next corner, and the sun starts to set, and I slept outside everywhere, and you're in, Syria or wherever, and you need a place to spend the night safely. And every night, I'd sort of ride along quietly, feeling my way, and I was guided to a place where I could safely spend the night. And so I learned to trust that relationship because, literally my life depended on it. And I might not have discovered it otherwise. I might not have discovered that relationship, that guidance, except that my life depended on it. And I passed through so many ways of understanding what it means to be human. Like, every culture is a construct that tells its members what it means to be human. And our culture is hierarchical and male, and all of its language is inflected towards top-down modalities. So the first time in the whole of my journey that I felt culture shock was 2 years after I'd left home. I returned, and this deeply familiar world was suddenly bizarre and arbitrary. So I come back with the ability to question my culture, to hold it to account. It's like a fish has got to leave water in order to know what the water is. So I had to leave my culture in order to come back to it. And that really started my journey. There's a word I made up, eleutheromania, and it just means a mania for freedom. And I think I was born an eleutheromaniac and highly, highly sensitive to any impediment to my freedom. And all those impediments live within me. And that's where they're encountered. And so that encounter, began at a young age, and it took decades to get to the point where I'd undone those barriers within me to the point where I could help others do the same for themselves.
Eleutheromaniac. Don't you think that we're all eleutheromaniacs? I love that. It's a beautiful story.
I think we are at heart. We just forget, right? I mean, there's this balance between safety and security, and our culture is taught to want safety. Mm-hmm. And we defer to safety, and we want to keep our kids safe and ourselves safe, and there are layers and layers of safety. And one thing I've noticed in my decades on this earth is that if you're alive, you're not safe. Yeah. I mean, you're just not. You're gonna die. You're gonna get sick. You're gonna get hurt. So there's this little current in our culture that understands that and says, well, maybe if I'm less alive, I'll be more safe. And that's what people buy into. And so that eleutheromania, that love of freedom, is contained and dampened and compartmentalized.
Yeah, I've got my phone because my memory's not that fantastic these days. And I want to make sure that I remember the term, eleutheromaniac. And I have to say that it feels good to be in the company of another eleutheromaniac. It feels supportive to hear about somebody speak about the journey of riding this wave of firstly wanting to be free, and then from that place of freedom challenging that which they see that would diminish their pursuit of that freedom. So now being in the company of you and you speaking about that, I feel more support for being an eleutheromaniac myself. My journey was different from yours. You started earlier and you came back from this initial conquest for your own freedom, and to feel that sort of like, well, surviving is really just a moment-to-moment pursuit. And then when you came back, I would imagine you came back into the same constructs, the same paradigms that you left. So how did you, did you feel the desire for expressing your mania, your desire for freedom, or was there some revolt inside you, or some gravity to giving yourself the freedom that some part of you wanted?
It's not that I came back at the age of 20 a free man. It's that I came back at the age of 20 able to question my culture, mm-hmm. able to question the assumptions that had been taken into my own body. Mm-hmm. And so the impediments to my freedom are the normal givens of my culture, which tells us that breathing is a top-down operation, which tells us that the brain in the head is the almighty ruler that should be in charge, and the body's not very smart. Mm-hmm. It tells us that that up is good and down is bad. You're looking up today. I mean, we know what that means. In another culture, you're looking up today could mean you're looking a little disconnected and ungrounded. Are you okay? But no, in our culture, up is good because that's where we go in the body. We think going into the head is going to safety. He's on a real high. We know what that means. And if you say to somebody, you're looking kind of low, we know what that means. In another culture, that can mean you're looking grounded and at peace with yourself. How wonderful. But that ability to rest on the earth is tacitly denied us because we want to disconnect. We want to raise our consciousness. God, if I hear one more person talking about raising our consciousness in a culture where our consciousness is migrated so high in the body that if it goes any higher, it's going to leave altogether, which is what people tacitly want. They want to leave this encumbrance of the body and attain a purer kind of spiritual realm. Well, our task on this earth is to inhabit this body and taste and live and feel, because the world wants to be discovered through that intelligence. Or so it seems to me.
You're my kind of man, Philip. That's so beautifully said. And I know that I guess the compelling, the compelling arguments to be in the head and to not stay grounded, and also to be part of the head constructed paradigms of our, of our world, they're powerful. So, what I guess, like the topic for this show about desire, about following the desire, starts in knowing what is real, what comes from the bottom of us, and being in service of that. And I know that lots of people find that hard. I have found that a hard thing to do because of the compellingness of what's up and what comes from up. So speak to us as someone who's been illuminated by this from a young age, it seems, and then having discovered this on your journey and then confronted this on your journey back. Where did you go with that? Did you immediately go into the work of pursuing this, or was this a matter of just following it for many years in work? How did you stay in service to this versus being in service to that which you were protesting against?
I could not do otherwise than notice the barriers to my own freedom and chafe and examine and question and try to undo them. I mean, it wasn't, it's like the writing of my first book. I didn't ever decide to write the book. I was awakened at 6 o'clock in the morning, as fully awake as I've ever been in my life, with the first line of this book in my head. And by, 7 o'clock, I'm lying there. I've got the first chapter roughed out and a sense of the next two chapters. And I got up and started writing, and people say, "Oh, how wonderful that you stuck at it for 10 years." And it's like, no, it was an agony not to be in service to that, not to be writing it. It would just hurt. It was a soul agony. So it wasn't anything about, perseverance. And the same with this issue of freedom. It's not perseverance. It's a matter of life and death. It's a matter of the agony of self-consciousness, the agony of impulses that are thwarted and judged, how to uncoil from that, which means, it's just a matter of coming to trust the body's intelligence. And I say just, I mean, in our culture, that's a huge thing, but the physiological reality is that the body processes 1 billion times more information than we can be consciously aware of. 1 billion times. And people who are sensitive to that volume of information, and it's not information you can objectively know. It's not readily given to language, but my gosh, you feel it. You attune to the present through the body. And once you learn to trust that vast intelligence and the subtlety with which it moves, then to defer to the chatter in the head becomes such a meager substitute for fully embodied life.
Yeah. Yes. That's beautifully said. And so, paraphrasing that, or reflecting that, the experience of being in the body, which is the work that you have created, cornerstone, I guess, of the work that you've created. This idea of getting out of the head and pulling that experience down. What there's what did you say? You said that it would be maddening not to. It'd be maddening not to pursue that which you viewed as your path to freedom, and carving that out was a compulsion, and people.
It was a mania, one could say.
Mm. And what do you offer people? And to speak about this, what do you offer people as an experience, or what would you suggest to people as an experience or a reason why they should be more in their own bodies, and why they should seek to create more of an experience within their own bodies as a function of getting them to understand, more about why they want to be in life and what they truly desire. For those who don't have an experience of that.
Before I answer that, I'd love to clarify what I mean by embodied, because our culture is so bound in top-down paradigms that embodiment has come to mean listening to the body. Now, the very phrase listening to the body communicates that the body is next door and there's a wall separating you from it, and the best you can do is put your ear to that wall to find out what's happening on the other side. It's like mindfulness is not about sitting in the head, noticing the breath, noticing the texture of the table, noticing the breeze or whatever. The mind is the whole of you. Every cell in your body participates in mind. So there are other cultures that experience the center of their mind in the heart or in the pelvic bowl. The center of their thinking is in the body. It's not being mediated between the head and the body. So even to talk about a mind-body split is to perpetuate a fiction. If you think about a mind-body split, you're tacitly saying the body is without a mind. Mind is different from the body. Every cell in the body participates in your thinking. The only mindless body I know of would be lying in a morgue. So it's not a mind-body split we're dealing with. It's a mind-mind split. We are schizophrenic. There is an intelligence in the head that has been separated from the intelligence of our being. And it's been separated systematically. I mean, for 12 years, as tender kids, we're made to sit in a chair and suppress the body's intelligence, which is the same as the body's energy, and fill our heads with the right idea. And the more successful you are at suppressing the body's energy, and the more you can fill your head with the right ideas, the better your grades, the more successful. So we are taught to separate our thinking from our being. And it's a matter of bringing those two modes of thinking back into harmony. So then why would you want to do that? I mean, there's so many things people want in their lives. You know, they might want peace of heart. They might want adventure. They might want to live with a sense of truth. But none of those matter unless you're present. And presence is impossible without the body. The head is a realm of abstraction. Abstraction is something that has been pulled from the context of reality. The body rests in the here. Presence is about being here. And so that's another of our culture's mistakes or misunderstandings. We think of things being contained within their own existence. So we think that to be present is to somehow organize myself into that place where I am present. Presence is about relationship. Presence is about feeling that tree. It's about being present to that person. It's about being in relationship with what is around you. Mm-hmm. And that requires the body. The body feels the world. And the world, the currents of the present run through it at every moment. So the body isn't a sort of mindless machinery of bone and muscle. It is this sensitively attuned resonator. Now, that's its potential, but we take that resonator and we stuff it full of tensions and stuck ideas and anxieties, and so it stops resonating to the present. And when your body no longer resonates to the present as a partner in your life ceases to exist. And when the present ceases to exist, when its guidance blinks out of sight, all you can do is guide yourself. And then all you can do is sit in your head and issue orders to the body and to your life and to your relationships.
Yes. The only way that we really truly know that we're here at all, I'm going to paraphrase, the only way that we truly know that we're here at all, which is practiced in not medications, but in meditations of all kinds, is in being aware of and in relationship, as you say, with experience. All that is sensorial, of course, happens through this conduit. The body, as opposed to the abstractions of just some part of it, a very strong, capable part of the mind. And it is an obsession of our world to be preoccupied with the power to abstract. The abstractions are the oppression on the freedom to just be and to experience, right? And then so the only way to know what you want at all is to be aware of what is there, to start off with at least what is there. If you don't know what is there, then how could you possibly know what you want? It sounds to me like you're saying, I would say that. I hope that I'm not putting words into your mouth.
Well, let me provide a slightly different framework. I would say our cultural obsession is with organizing. Mm-hmm. And we organize the self, and we organize our careers, and we organize our relationships. And that obsession to organize makes impossible the experience of feeling yourself being organized by the present. Mm-hmm. To give yourself an emptiness over to the present and feeling it organize you. And I think desire I mean, there are different levels, different kinds of desire, but the desire you're talking about, it's like your life's calling, that away.
I'm going to ask you, Philip, to just, if you can hear me, to just back up a second, because you cut out there for a moment. I'm not sure if it's the internet on your end, but what you had to say is important. So you wouldn't mind backing up about 10 seconds.
Wait, 10 seconds. I'll see if I can do that. I'm happy to. So the desire that you're talking about, that, and if I'm reading it, you're talking about the deep desire, the desire that awakens the whole of your life to a calling. That happens, in my experience, when you find that way of coming to rest in the body, in the present, and you feel the wholeness of your being, the wholeness of your life present to this moment. And there will be a tug. If you're patient with it, you will feel yourself tugged, because the world is calling you to put your specific gifts into service. And it is calling over and over. And you have been born with a cluster of gifts that no one else has ever had. And that's what the world is calling for. And that is what desire is married to, is that calling.
Yeah, and I would say that in a way I would simplify that very truth, that complicated truth. The calling is a complicated truth, more complicated than the idea of knowing that you like chocolate versus strawberry. Knowing that you like chocolate versus strawberry cannot be understood without trying chocolate and tasting what it tastes like, and tasting strawberry, and being in a place of sensing what is actually happening. And so this dropping in that you're suggesting, which I think the world would be so much better with if we all were able, if we all did that, if we all dropped into and allowed ourselves to go on a journey that where we could feel what is calling our existence from moment to moment, then we can really, kick this world into gear and serve our own purpose, of course, and then onto perhaps a greater purpose in this world. What are the things that you see stopping people from actually doing that? I see that as being complicated. What is getting in the way of allowing people to feel that criticalness, to drop deeply into their being, to feel that?
We're taught to be in charge of our lives. We're taught to take control. We're taught to know what we want and implement our plan to get it. Everything we're taught is top down. And that activation of your truth, your desire, I mean, top down is great. It's got wonderful gifts, but it's impotent in the things that matter most. You cannot reason your way into the present. You just can't do it. The present is there to be felt in all its unknowability. You can't reason your way into love. You can't reason your way into desire. You find those with a surrender to the present. And so the things that act as impediments to that live within the body. If your body will not release to your breath, your body will not release to the present. It just won't. But we don't release. We're taught not to release our body to the breath. I mean, a baby born into this world doesn't have to be told how to breathe. It just knows it. And you watch a baby in its crib, and the whole of its body releases to the in-breath and releases to the out-breath. We have turned breathing into a top-down operation. We know it's important to breathe deeply, and so we push the breath from the top down into the body, and that takes muscular effort, and the muscles get tired, and the breath goes shallow again. But we've forgotten how to initiate the in-breath with a release deep, deep in the pelvic floor. And it's such a gentle, life-giving, transforming release that happens. And then the body follows that release. And then you begin to feel the present, and you begin to feel yourself in the present, and the present coursing through you. And there is a partnership there that illuminates your life. But as long as we are in control, we are blinding and deafening ourselves from the subtlety and the richness and the power of that relationship.
Yeah. How do the words release and surrender, how do they tie together in your mind?
How to say that again? How to release and surrender?
It's just a word that came to me as you were speaking. You were speaking about this idea of breathing, where you're able to release the breath, and with that, that brings us into the richness of the present moment. So, do you sense a relationship between surrender as a, I don't know if that's a term that you would use, and release?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sorry, yeah. And surrender in in our culture, again, it's complicated because it's seen as giving up. You surrender, an army surrenders, and that's not what this is about. If you've already surrendered the present, then there is no authority, there is no power or force that you surrender to, because you're standing in that truth of the present. And all the ways in which our culture has taught us to know ourselves, we are taught to pin our identity down and know who you are. That's so important in our culture. And all of that structuring is a bulwark against the present. So it isn't something I can take skin. My being is what is illuminated as I come into relationship with the world around me. I come into relationship with a tree, and who I am is illuminated in a particular way, just as it is as I come into relationship with a child playing on a sidewalk. And so the more deeply I come into relationship, the more deeply I come to know myself, but not in a pinned down, structured, fixed way at all. It is a fluid understanding, aliveness that is born in us by our relationships with the world around. So the porosity of the self, we are taught to have healthy boundaries and contain the self from the influences of the world. Well, that very containment, which can be life-saving in certain circumstances, as a long-term venture, becomes a prison. It's the prison of self-consciousness. It's the prison of self-division, of self-judgment. And it breaks that conduit with the present and the living world around you.
So this idea, you're expressing surrender as in terms of being able to release, surrendering to the wisdom that exists in the moment. Of course, the wisdom has to be experienced through the body. There is one of the most basic ways that we function is within breath, and that does allow us to relate to anyone, to anything, to ourselves, to an act of being, so that surrender is in not holding on to any idea or something that would prevent us from being sort of more fully and relaxed in our body in relationship with whatever is going on in the moment, to surrender to that. the relationship and the dynamicism that's happening in the relationship versus any other idea that we're trying to hold on to, surrender to that.
Yeah, it's like we're so invested in the individuated tiny self that we have closed ourselves off from the larger self. So, you know, I mean, again, it's our culture where we're taught to organize the self into wholeness. And that, you know, that saying, that aspiration to be whole in body, mind, and spirit is telling us that there are three aspects to the self. And if you can allow each of those to flourish and come into harmony, you will be whole. As if it were independent of relationship. And so we try to achieve wholeness when in fact wholeness is all there is. Right. It's already achieved. You can't escape it. And then all you can do is surrender to it. And that's what the surrender is. It's just a surrendering from that fearful, contracted self into the reality of your life.
And yet we are so parsed as people. I see that we are parsed. Children today that are, you know, that are in the world of fantasy or in the world of distraction, in the world of technology, are parsed. You know, their existence is parsed into an aspect of their being. That is you know, it is a division of our wholeness. And people spend a great deal of time in only that one aspect of our wholeness to the detriment of the rest of us. And for the rest of them, people don't know how. I mean, I can look at someone and I can see that they're not allowing their consciousness, their awareness to spend time just in, you know, in their own body, in their own skin, in their back, you know, in their arms. How would you, are you still with me, Philip? It looked like maybe you froze there. Oh, you did. Let me know when you're back online.
You hear me, Ian?
Now I can hear you.
Sorry, you blanked out for maybe 15 seconds, but I was with you until you dropped.
Yeah, no, I was actually, you were quite still. I'm like, I don't know if he's still with me also. He's very still. I was saying how, you know, I can look at people today, especially young people, and tell that their own consciousness, their awareness is not in their body. They don't spend a great deal of time there. So, and then you can speak to someone about that and they won't necessarily know what you're talking about. And so how would you, in your practices, how would you invite people into that experience in the first place? Where would you invite people to begin to have such an experience, to release some aspect of themselves, to experience a greater aspect of themselves?
You know, in my workshop, the workshop I most often teach is a weekend workshop, and it moves through 4 themes. So the morning of the first day is breath, the afternoon is rest, the morning of the second day is receptivity, the afternoon of the last day is integration. And there's a logic to that, because the beginning is to awaken the intelligence or the sensitivity of the pelvic bowl. We have in that quest to go higher and higher, we have lost the ground of our being. I really experience the pelvic floor as the ground of my being. It's where, when I come home to myself, that's where I land. And so with the breath, as it learns to yield to the breath and release to the breath, it awakens, and then you have a place to come to rest, which is the second theme. You can, once that's awake, you can rest there. Once you're resting in the pelvic bowl, you can receive into the pelvic bowl. We're so used to receiving into our head, and you can drop down into the pelvic bowl and feel the world from there, and feel the whole of your life from there, and just receive. And I don't see a difference between receiving than being present. If I'm fully receptive to someone, I'm fully present to them. If I'm fully present to them, I'm fully receptive. But we abstract what it is to be present. And it's more difficult to abstract what it is to receive. And then once you're receiving into the pelvic bowl, you are integrating, because that intelligence in the body has a genius for integration. And we've come to believe that integration is a matter of gathering as many bits and pieces as we can and sticking them together. And that's not wholeness. Wholeness is what happens when a perspective or an idea is brought down through the body and is reborn as a sensitivity.
So it's taking people and bringing them into the core of the cavity of this vessel, of this, this vessel of this world, bringing their awareness there, starting there. That's what you are saying you help people do, to bring it to there.
Yeah, and in doing that, I mean, it's a charged area. The pelvic bowl is a charged area. And there are lots of feelings that come up, but the attention, the awareness is being brought back to the simplest of things. Can you feel the pelvic floor release to the breath? Just that. Can you feel it release to the breath? And the pelvic floor is technically a diaphragm in the body. So there's the thoracic diaphragm and the pelvic floor, and they move together, except that the pelvic floor becomes locked up. And so the thoracic diaphragm is pumping away, and there is just stasis below that. So it's such a relief to discover that other diaphragm in the body releasing to the breath.
I love that. I'm gonna have to come check out your, some of your ways, some of your I guess the different workshops that you offer, to see how you guide people into this experience. It's beautiful. It totally resonates with me. And then as a general practice, so you guide people into this experience so that they can allow themselves, I would imagine, on their own, beyond just breath. I mean, people are preoccupied with, certain aspects. You're asking people through these aspects to come back down into their center, and then from this place, what should be the stasis for, sounds like you're saying, for just being. You feel that the answers, or the place of desire, or the place of just comfort, or just a basic sort of place, is for people to be in this place of centrality in their body.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier, like there's no such thing as safety. If you're alive, you're not safe. But there is security. And to come down to the pelvic bowl, to be able to rest on the ground of your being, is to discover your security. Mm-hmm. And it's always there. And it's home. You can come home to yourself if you know how to land in the body. And it's not, in my experience, so much that you find answers there as that you find the important questions. And it's the question that starts the quest. It's the question that takes you into the unknown to surrender and risk and play and find out for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, that security that you mentioned, I guess when I say answers, people are not secure. People do not feel secure in this existence, or even in this vessel. So the answer could be in that you are held. Hey, guess what? Drop down into your, into your basin, and you will feel that you are actually held. You could start from that place as an answer to the insecurity that we do feel, and the quest for something rather frantic that is maybe not that much more in essence than just your health.
And I mean, it's a beautiful way of putting it, Ian, because when your when your center of awareness does drop down through the body and come to rest on the pelvic floor, you feel yourself held by the whole world. There is a ravishing intimacy to everything. And at the same time, you don't take any of it personally. It's like this place of non-personal intimacy.
I love to hear the different approaches that people have towards finding that place of truth in the body. And that feels as beautiful as any that I've heard. So thank you for sharing that, Philip. And I would like to know, being in this place, being in this work, it seems obvious to me. And are you always in your inspiration by in being in this work and on this path, having stayed on this path throughout your life? Do you feel that you are always in your inspiration? And if not, what kind of gets you there?
There are times when I find myself resisting the surrender. And it always feels like crap, and it always feels like I'm being overwhelmed. But I've come to recognize that, and that's what's happening. And I'm able to just drop down into the body and come back to the resonance. And that is the inspiration, that is the breath that moves my life forward. And I've come to live with a deep, deep trust in a wisdom that is not my own, in the wisdom of the whole to which I belong. And it unfolds with a sensitivity that my ingenious schemes could never begin to rival. And so I come back to the trust and come back to the activation of the whole of my being in response to what is being asked of me.
And so when you're at your edges and you're not feeling maybe you're not feeling any inspiration, or you're a little bit outside of yourself or too far ahead of yourself, just a little ways back, you drop back into yourself. You have that practice of dropping back into yourself so that you can feel held. It sounds like you understand that you are being held by not just yourself, but all the forces that come through you as something greater. And that allows you to feel, well, it's great, we've gone full circle. That's that's what I was talking about being in the car yesterday, also being a little.
Yes, yeah. And I've come to recognize that any energy that is held in my body is a form of resistance to the present. And once you recognize that, you acquire choice, and you can feel that energy and allow it to integrate rather than being held apart from your being, which is what we do with the body's energy. We compartmentalize it, we shut it up, we hold it in shadow. And how to release all of that back down to the pelvic bowl to be integrated is at one and the same time to return to that place of inspiration.
Love it. Thank you for sharing all of that, Philip. It was really, really enjoyable to dive into this deeply with you and to hear about your work, your approach, and just to feel your energy and your groundedness and your passion. You know how this, it's, I mean, to me, and I hope to others, just seeing how this has become not just an obsession to you as a way of living in your own body, but promoting this way of living and this way of being amongst others, which is so crucial at this time, so needed.
And it's also so much fun, which helps.
It's so much fun. Yeah. You froze up on the video, but I can hear you. So okay, there you go. You, from what I understand, you've got a gift for everybody that's watching today.
Yeah, I'd love to share like just a simple audio exercise. You know, we were talking about up and down, and our energy in our culture goes higher and higher in the body. And the higher your energy goes in the body, the more alone you feel, the more anxious you feel, the more the world around you feels like something separate from you. And so I'd love to share an audio exercise that counterbalances that and gives an alternative.
Perfect. That's a perfect gift. There's a button on this page, so for everybody that wants to collect that gift, just click on the button and download that gift that Philip is so generously offering everybody. Philip, thanks so much. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. It was lovely and wonderful to engage once again.
It's been a joy, and it's so much fun squirreling into the issues with you and trying to bring some clarity to them.
Beautiful. Well, awesome. Thank you. And thanks everyone again for watching, and bye for now.